back to another Motorhome Matt podcast with me, Keith Gooden, and Motorhome Matt Sims.
Hey Keith, good to be here.
Great to be here with you as well. Matt, we're going to dive straight in on this one because it's something that's made a big question mark in my head. We're talking about motorhoming, how great it is, what is fantastic about it. And we have talked over the weeks about the costs involved. But how do you budget for it? What with the cost of living crisis, which is hitting everybody in the UK at the moment? I want to buy my motorhome. I want to be a motorhomer and caravanner. So what's it actually going to cost me net?
So do you want to be a motorhomer or a caravanner?
What would you recommend?
You strike me as a caravanner.
Do you? Oh, I thought it was a motorhome.
What does that actually mean?
Yeah, I would have thought somebody in charge of a huge Winnebago with their 4-poster bed imported from San Diego or somewhere like that. You obviously don't see me that way.
No, I don't see you in Meet the Fockers. Remember that?
More like Carry On Camping.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Let's talk about motorhomes. So, and I've got way more experience of this than I have. I own a caravan as well. In fact, we've just sold it. But we've had both, but I've had a lot more motorhomes than I've had caravans. So I can talk with a bit more authority. So the first thing is you've got to buy it, unless you can borrow it. I started out by borrowing a motorhome. She was called Phoebe. And it was a really old American Fleetwood Southwind it was. Lovely old thing. And we were able to borrow it. And we kept it. We never gave it back. And then eventually we did pay for it about a year later, as the guy I borrowed it from, a friend of mine, didn't want it anymore. So we were able to start by borrowing it. But these days, of course, £6,000 bought me that RV way back then. Late 90s probably. Nowadays, you're not going to find a motorhome for 6k, not when you could live in anyway and stay dry. You're probably looking at 20k plus. Prices have gone up. We keep talking about this, don't we, and referring to it. But it's true, it's the reality. They've become a more expensive pastime to purchase. And in fact, the running costs have gone up as well, of course, with fuel. But what does it actually cost? So probably you're budgeting around 20k, thereabouts. You may be fortunate and find something cheaper. New, you're looking at probably 50k mark nowadays, up to, hundreds of thousands if you wanted to. £100,000 is going to buy you something very German, certainly European built. There are a few UK manufacturers in that price point as well, and it's going to be something very salubrious. And very luxurious. And of course, then when you're buying it, the dealer's going to offer you a whole plethora of extras, new or used. You're going to be offered things like do you want to accessorise it? Maybe you want to put a television aerial on it, a satellite dome. Maybe you want to put motorhome Wi-Fi in it. That's increasingly become a trend, and satellite dishes are becoming a thing of the past, which is good because Wi-Fi is a lot cheaper. An awning, that sun canopy that goes on the side that retracts back into the cartridge on the side of the motorhome. They're lovely in the summer, but all these things carry a cost, and so it's possible to spend thousands of pounds before you even leave the dealership. Before you've even taken ownership of it, go, I'll have one of those, and if it's new, there's an options list. And I'm a mug for the options list. Alloy wheels, that's a man thing, isn't it? I'm yet to meet a woman that says, alloy wheels, they're a must-have. It's always the men that want the alloy wheels. Bike rack, we need a bike rack. Never cycled in my life, but we need a bike rack. The awning, lovely to have. That's great. Motorhome Wi-Fi, great one. Automatic gearbox, oh, definitely. The car's auto. Let's have that as well. And suddenly, you've spent 10 grand on all these bits and bobs that are lovely to have, but they just carry a cost and they carry a weight, which is a different podcast on payload, which you can find in the library of podcasts here. But consider the weight of all these things as well. So, and that's before you've bought table, chairs, knives, forks, spoons, those special melamine plates that rattle less than the ones that from IKEA do. So all this stuff has to. You could spend £1,000 on cookware, bakeware, tableware, outdoor furniture, easily. Some camping chairs these days, you can spend £200 plus on a chair. So it can add up really quickly.
So when you hire out motorhomes as part of your business, do you hire all those accessories with it? Or is it something that, even if you hire your motorhome, that you should buy for yourself and keep in the garage when you're not using them?
Well, a motorhome holiday company, we include all of that stuff. So they come fully equipped. We have a shop as well, and our hire customers aren't really good customer prospects for the shop because they don't need to buy anything. Everything's in there, even the toilet chemical. We even put a scour, a sponge in so you can wash up. So all that stuff when you're hiring one is normally included. Some hire companies will charge for the outdoor furniture as an option, and there may be other optional extras like a bike rack. We include it all. It's dead easy.
So I've already dropped £40,000 if I'm not hiring, if I'm buying on the motorhome, and some of those nice shiny accessories you've been talking about. Am I on the road? Am I ready to go?
Nearly. So you've got to tax it. Assuming even if it's used, it's going to need road tax. And of course, those rules changed, didn't they? Now, when you buy a used vehicle, the road tax doesn't transfer to the new keeper, which people often forget. So before you can drive it away, you've got to road tax it. Now, there are 2 price bands for motorhome road tax. They're not like cars. It's not based on emissions. Provided the vehicle is a category M1 in the vehicle type, then it's considered by the DVLA to be a leisure vehicle, a campervan vehicle, motorhome. And so there are 2 tax bands. If it's under 3.5 tonnes, at the moment, it's £270 a year to tax the vehicle. If it's over 3.5 tonnes, it's £165. And that makes you a private heavy goods vehicle. Why it's cheaper for being a heavier motorhome is not clear to me. I have some cynical views about that, about the fact there's a lot more HGVs on the road than there are private light goods, and you don't need many of those to block a road if the price went up. That's my view anyway. But that's what it's going to cost to road tax. And of course it needs an MOT. So it has to have, be MOT'd every year once it's 3 years old. So often when you're buying a new motorhome, the road tax might be included from the dealer. That's something you need to ask them. And of course it doesn't need an MOT, and it wouldn't need a service at that point. The dealer's going to do all of that for you. You might have the option of buying an extra warranty. That will normally come with a manufacturer's warranty brand new. A second-hand one will often come with a warranty that you could increase the cover or the extent of the warranty cover. And you need to think about a service plan. Do you want to buy a service plan? It's very common with cars, less so with motorhomes. Some dealerships have a vision for this about keeping you coming back, and they want to have that customer relationship with you for a longer term. And you can basically prepay or pay monthly for your servicing and MOT as you go through a relationship with that motorhome.
So we've already established then that the cost of the motorhome, if you buy it, could be, say, £30,000 or £40,000 quite easily. But as we've discussed in previous podcasts, these things hold their value. If you're going to sell it in 3 years' time, you're likely, not guaranteed, but likely, given the market conditions at the moment, to get your money back.
Yep.
You can always hire, as we've discussed before. So actually, once that capital cost, you've spent it, that big lump of money, the ongoing costs are quite reasonable.
They are. You've got to insure it as well before you can drive it away. And motorhome insurance is typically between £300 and, maybe £800. Ours is around £400 a year for our personal use. And of course, it's going to depend on the value of the motorhome and where you live and where you're storing it as well. So if you're storing it on the drive at home and you're in a fairly low crime postcode, then your insurance premium is going to be lower. It will also be determined by your own claim history. If you had 5 cars nicked and 14 broken into, then your insurance company are going to want to charge you for that. But if you're like me, I'm fortunate. We live in a very rural area where crime is low, and so our premiums are lower as a result. And that's those are factors that are going to determine the premium.
And people always take insurance quotes personally, don't they? I've been driving a long time. I'm a safe driver and all the rest. But you do have to understand that the insurance company, it's the level of risk that they're applying, as you say, to where you live, where you're storing it. There could have been a spate of motorhome thefts, within 10 miles of you over the last 5 years. Things you don't know about, but they will all have a bearing on the quote that the insurance company will give you.
They do. And it's really important on this point that you get specialist motorhome insurance. It's very easy to go to Tesco and get a quote from them. I recommend you don't do that. Nothing against Tesco, but to get a motorhome specific policy, you then know that the true value of the vehicle is going to be reflected in the cover they're giving you. And if something goes wrong, it's going to be covered. And they're going to want to know the category of the vehicle. If it's a van that's been converted that you've bought, is it a van with windows? Is it a motorhome, a camper van? What is it? And that's going to have a real impact on your premium. And bear in mind, if it's still a van, but it's got an £8,000 conversion and you've just paid 20k for it, and it's a van, it's going to be insured for £1,500. If it's stolen, that's what you're going to get. So really important you check the cover and you go to a specialist. There are lots of them out there, and I would avoid these, Go Compare and the comparison sites, and go and look out a specific motorhome insurer. And we have a podcast planned where we're going to talk to a few specific leisure vehicle insurers and get us to talk to us about get them to talk to us about motorhome cover specifically.
And it's nothing against those comparison sites, but their business model is based on the private motorist. And as you said, with motorhoming, it's a specialist part of motoring, and you need to talk to the experts. So what other costs are there involved then?
So there's something called a habitation check, which if your motorhome is still under manufacturer warranty, so it's quite new, manufacturer warranties generally are 2 or 3 years long, and then there's often a 5 or 10 year water ingress cover. So that's basically damp, water getting in, which is the enemy of any motorhome. For that cover to stay in play, the manufacturer is going to want that vehicle inspected every year by an improved engineer. So that isn't you going around with a damp meter and checking the gas oven and checking the hob and checking the drawers, everything that goes on in a habitation check. It is somebody who is assessed annually, someone who has an approval from an exterior body, and someone whose view and inspection of the motorhome can be trusted. And these guys are mobile, and you can go to a dealer and take to a motorhome service centre and have it done. You don't need to have one of these approved people look at your motorhome if it's not under manufacturer warranty, but I'd recommend you have someone who knows what they're doing look at it. They're going to do an electrical safety check, they're going to do a gas safety inspection, so gas pressure, gas leakage, and to do that stuff you need specialist equipment. They'll do a proper damp inspection. They'll know where to look for damp in your motorhome. Motorhomes let water in different places depending on the model, the design and build, and the quality of the build, and we know where to look on different models. So some will leak in the garage, in the back of the motorhome, some will leak under the bed, some will leak around a certain locker frame. We know that as people who've been doing this for years, and we do habitation checks in our business, so we know what to look for, and it's really important you get that level of insight. Look at yours. And
once you've had that habitation check, and we were talking about insurance, can that lower your insurance policy?
I don't know if it will lower the premium, but it might be a condition of your insurance company. And this, I've had more and more reports from people that their insurers want this done every year and they want to see the proof. Whether this is something that's becoming more prolific, I don't know. But certainly it's something I'm hearing more of, that the insurance company want to see an annual habitation check and they want to see the evidence. We'll see where that goes. But I know lots of people that they do lots of checks on the motorhome themselves, and very fastidiously too. So they choose to have a habitation check done every other year. Maybe that's safe if you're living in it full time. I'm not sure that's such a good idea, because the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning is very real from a boiler or a fridge that's failing. I saw something on Facebook where someone took a bend on a roundabout and the fridge fell out of the motorhome whilst they were driving along, and that's the screws had sheared, and it was unfortunate. And whether that was just unlucky, poor workmanship, I don't know. But that fridge should be sealed in, because in the back of it is a naked flame, because it runs on gas, and that flame creates carbon monoxide, and that chamber that the fridge sits in must be absolutely sealed properly.
So no matter how safe you consider yourself to be, or how, as you say, fastidious, insurance companies and perhaps you should be considering a third party doing these inspections just for safety, the safety of your family. Forget insurance. You're taking your family out in it. You want them to be safe, don't you?
And every year there is a report of a motorhome or caravan catching fire somewhere on a campsite. And it's normally as a result of a vehicle that's not been serviced either properly or at all. And it's normally something to do with gas. Something's leaked, exploded, caught fire. and lives are at risk when that happens.
Absolutely. And carbon monoxide poisoning, that's a silent killer as well. Just to explain to people who don't know, carbon monoxide, if it gets into your system, it boots out the oxygen from your bloodstream and you just go asleep and never wake up. It's an insidious killer. We have very strong laws in this country for it, and they extend to the motorhome, don't they?
They do. Yeah, they do. And so a carbon monoxide alarm is one of the best purchases. Talking of expenses, and again, smoke alarm as well. They're one of the most sensible features that you could purchase for your motorhome, along with the other safety stuff as well. Fire extinguisher, fire blanket, they're a very, very sensible addition.
So we've talked about a lot of the costs, the capital cost if you're buying, the cost of the accessories, insurance, and maintenance. Are we any closer to getting a net figure for the year?
We're on the road now. We've got some figures. We'll go through them at the end, shall we, just to top them up. And on YouTube, Jordan can do something clever with them on screen. I've thrown the gauntlet now, Jordan. So then you've got to think about storing it. Where are you going to put it? So if you've got it on your drive, are there any costs to that? Well, maybe you might have to knock part of the house down, take a garden wall out. I know people that have done more extremes than that. But you need to think about security. So I would always suggest a wheel clamp is a very good idea. A steering wheel lock, the more visible, the better. We've done an episode on motorhome security, haven't we? And as you referenced, motorhome theft is on the up. And in parts of the country, it's really climbing, just simply because motorhomes have gone up in value, and trying to get one is becoming harder. And the spare parts are becoming harder and harder to obtain. And there's stories of dealerships being broken into, and boilers, fridges, sinks, hobs, front seats, entire dashboards being stolen out of motorhomes that are on display. That's just horrendous. And yes, that business is insured, but that is months of them having to work really hard to try and get that stock back into a state where they can sell it. It's an absolute disaster for them. And I feel for them. And this crime is awful. And it's going on throughout the country, and increasingly so. So you need to think really carefully about security of your motorhome, and go and check out the podcast episode where we talk about security ideas for your motorhome. Really important. And maybe you're not going to put it on your drive, but you're going to put it into storage. Well, that carries a fee as well. And you need to think then again about security. The same rules apply. The harder you can make it for it to be taken, the more likely it is you're going to keep it.
So the costs are racking up, aren't they? I don't want to be negative about this, because motorhoming is a fantastic hobby, isn't it? And people should be considering it. And I suppose you need to balance it off with what you're going to be paying for holidays abroad you might not be taking now you've got your motorhoming. But have we reached the end of the list yet, Matt?
The list never ends, Keith.
Because my wallet is trembling.
It's a motorhome. They're just bottomless pits if you want to be. I mean, you could pay someone to clean it if you want. There's another cost. Again, that's completely optional, but £25 is going to get the local car wash to do it, and probably use a whole load of traffic film remover, or TFR, which is evil, all over it, and ruin the paint, a pressure washer, and blast all the sealant out. Can you tell I'm not a fan? So I would get a professional valeter if you're going to want someone else to clean it, especially on the roof. You're looking at possibly £100 typically for a valeter to come to your house and do that. You don't have to do that. But there are annual costs as well. So the servicing, MOT, the habitation check is an annual cost. It's a once a year. And we'll summarise these at the end, shall we? It's probably easiest, do you think?
You mean we haven't reached the end? The list goes on?
Well, you've got wear and tear. So, you're going to break stuff. A curtain rail's going to come off. A bathroom handle's going to come off in your hand. Tyres are going to wear out. So you've got some wear and tear, which you're going to need to consider and think about as well. I'll turn the page now because my list has gone on. You need to look at the mileage of the motorhome. So how old is it and how many miles has it done? If it's second-hand, does it need a cam belt? Now, motorhomes have a cam belt, and the recommendation is, it seems to vary actually depending on which website you go to. Personally, I would say 3 to 5 years is a good time to change the cam belt, or 50,000 miles, no more. I'd say that's very sensible.
Because some, I'm not sort of talking about motorhomes now, I'm talking about cars. The cam belt change recommendations do seem to have gone up over the years from 50, as you say, to maybe 80,000 miles. Are you saying that even when you read the manual and the recommendations, that actually you should be erring on the side of caution when it comes to cam belts?
I would. I mean, if a cam belt snaps on you, that's the end of your engine. Yeah, that's a big bill. And
Because just to let you know, it's the cam belt which is keeping everything turning in the right order, and once it goes, the engine just goes into all sorts of...
It turns the top, middle and bottom of the engine, keeps it all in time, and hence is often called a timing belt. And if it snaps, everything goes out of time and it all crashes in the middle, and it's a disaster. If you have a warranty, it's probably not going to be covered by it because it would be deemed wear and tear. And so I would definitely consider a cam belt change. And, they're not terribly expensive to have done, but definitely a good peace of mind. And on older motorhomes, you need to consider things like discs and pads and all those things you would have on a car, the exhaust system, perhaps the clutch. We've mentioned EGR valves in a previous episode.
What's that again, EGR?
Exhaust gas release. So motorhomes often are driven very sedately. There are pride and joy, and they're driven quite nicely.
People take care.
Yeah, they take care. Low rev. They don't really let them get really hot and high rev.
It's not a racing car after all, or even a performance.
And we're on holiday. We're not in a hurry. The downside of that is all the cokes that build up in the engine, all the carbon emissions, and they block up these valves, and they never get burnt off. And so good practice every now and again is hold it in second gear, hold it in third gear, let it rev up only once it's warm, let the engine warm up, and then do this every now and again. Let it really rev. You'll use a little bit of fuel to do this, but it will just let it get hot and let it burn off these little excess bits of carbon deposit, and you'll keep your exhaust gas release valve working happily. Diesel additives are a good idea. They help clean a different part of the engine, the particulate filter, and you can buy these little additives you put in the fuel, and they're a great idea. When we're servicing a motorhome, we add that every year and keep our customers' diesel systems nice and clean.
But some of these things is that people already do with their cars. If you own a diesel car, you could consider doing it for your car as well. So these things aren't just for motorhomes. Are they?
No.
Yes, it's a cost. It's an extra cost, but again, it's a maintenance pattern which you've probably been doing on your own car.
It's a few pounds. That's it. And then, of course, to use the motorhome, you probably want to join a club. So there are a number of clubs out there. The Caravan and Motorhome Club and the Camping and Caravanning Club. There are just two. And that means you get access to their campsites at a discounted rate. And then, of course, at the camp, there are hundreds and thousands of other campsites, which all charge a fee to stay the night, of course. If you're going onto the continent, there are sites that are free. So you can travel for free. And, of course, travelling means you've got fuel. So, that's going to be a very subjective cost.
Have we reached the end of the list yet? It's expensive. It keeps totting up.
I've reached the end of my written list. I mean, there are many more costs, but many of those things are optional.
Right. Well, let's sit down now.
Okay.
I've got my motorhome. I've decided to take the plunge. I want to own one, so I've shelled out that large capital cost. We've already established over many weeks of this podcast that it's likely, not guaranteed, but likely that the value of it will hold. It won't be a depreciating asset like a car is. For instance.
I can give you a real life story on that. So I sold a lovely motorhome called an Adria Twin. It's a van conversion, 6 meters long. And sold it second-hand, actually. I originally sold it brand new when I owned the dealership, and then bought it back, sold it again, and sold it 2.5 years ago to a lovely man, and I just bought it back from him a few weeks ago, and we basically gave him his money back nearly 3 years later.
So it's fair to say that capital cost on a motorhome could be an investment.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, definitely. I mean, his holidays were free. He actually only used it a few times because obviously he'd been through the whole lockdown thing of 2020, 2021. So it hadn't had a lot of use. But, imagine if that was a Range Rover, 100 grand out the door at the point you purchase, brand new, and 3 years later, it's going to be 50K. It's typical, isn't it, with a car? They say, you lose 20% straight away. You lose the VAT. Well, with a motorhome, you don't. I hear lots of stories almost every day of people who say, we're thinking of selling it. We've rung the dealer and they've said, we'll give you what you paid for it 3 years ago. We're desperate for stock. And then they see it advertised more expensive than a new one.
So we're not guaranteeing it, but the way the market has been for the last 12 months or so, due to pandemic and wars and all the rest of it, at the moment, that's the way the market is. Yeah, so I've spent my money. It's an investment.
It is.
I've got my ongoing costs. Now, what are we basing this on? A family of 2, 4, 6, 8?
So let's say you're buying a 4-berth mid-range motorhome, second-hand. You're probably going to spend 30K, 35K, somewhere around there. I mean, that's such a subjective answer, and people would do their research. My advice is go and look at as many as possible. And again, there's another podcast episode on choosing the best motorhome for you. So go and check that out. But most people find that I speak to anyway, they look at the kind of 20k market and kind of go, oh dear, it was horrible. It still had his knickers in and her bra,
Yeah, a bit tight.
It smelt, and that's true. And that's also going to depend, where it's for sale as well. And so they realise pretty quickly that if they up the budget by 10 or 15k into that 30+ thousand pound mark, the type of motorhome you can buy now is massively improved. It's a much newer chassis, less miles, less use, much more modern interior, and some nicer features and fixtures and so on.
Right, so you're going to have your £30,000, but we've already established with the way the market is that could be an investment for the future. So now, a 4-berth motorhome, let's say it's 2 adults and 2 children, you're going to go on holiday abroad, say to Spain or somewhere like that. What's that, £2,500, £3,000 for that holiday?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
So what I'm trying to get to, the point I'm trying to get to is, are the ongoing costs with the ownership of that motorhome going to balance off the costs of my holiday? Say I go once a year for a big holiday and then have a little break abroad. So let's say I'm spending £5,000 a year on holidays, and we know that would be a budget. Those will be budget holidays for
so £5,000 a year on flying somewhere holiday?
Yeah, flying somewhere. But now I've got my motorhome and I'm going away. So how does that £5,000 a year divide into my costs for my motorhome, excluding the purchase price?
Yeah, okay, I get it. So you could easily spend that motorhoming, but it depends how often you're going to use it. So most people find their motorhome sat on the drive for 48 weeks of the year, because they do several weekends and maybe a week or 2 in the summer. So is it a viable investment in terms of that holiday experience? Arguably, yes. It's easy to talk yourself into it. It's more about, I think, buying the flexibility and the ability to say, the weather's great, let's go. Lots of people go out for the day. They don't even stay the night. Just go off for a day trip. You've got your kitchen, you've got your bathroom, you've got all the facilities, you've got your own hotel on wheels. And it's very easy to take a cold look at motorhoming. Motorhome isn't a cheap holiday. I don't think it ever has been, really. It's not. You can get bargain deals if you buy enough copies of The Sun. You can go wherever for a few pounds if you collect enough vouchers. Would it be a pleasant experience? I don't know. Possibly not. It wouldn't be for me, but I'm a snob by my own admission.
But the key here is, and what I'm trying to get to, Matt, is as you say, motorhoming isn't cheap. It's not necessarily going to save you money. You shouldn't approach it with the state of mind which says, I'm going to buy a motorhome because it's cheap and cheerful, and I'm not going to spend as much on holidays. What you're saying is it's different, and you need to invest in it. Am I right? Yeah,
that's right. It can be a cheaper holiday, definitely. I'd say it becomes a more affordable way of holidaying. Certainly, I'm a father of 4, and for us, flying off to Costa del whatnot with all the kids, we're looking at £7,000 or £8,000 in the summer if we want to pre-book it and have a plan.
Business class?
No. I've done business class in a previous life working, and it's amazing, but I couldn't justify spending that, personally. So those types of holidays with the kids by the pool, I mean, they love it, but they are not cheap. That's a lot of holidays in a motorhome. I mean, more than we'd ever do. And we will go to campsites where there isn't a club, a clubhouse. There might be a small bar, there might be a small shop. We prefer and we choose to go to the quieter ones. There might be a pool, there might be kids climbing and stuff the kids can be busy doing. But we tend to go to those quieter, smaller campsites. And we're looking at maybe £30 a night to stay there. And that's £90 if we go for a weekend, plus some fuel. So we're probably looking at spending £300 with food and drink and so on for a weekend away, and we can do that 10 times a year, and that's where it becomes a very affordable super holiday. And actually those are the holidays my kids remember more than sure, they have great memories of flying off to Tenerife and so on, but it's the motorhome holidays that I think they'll take forward into their adult lives and talk about.
what makes the memories, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We honestly have had some fantastic times, some not so good times as well. British weather.
Yeah.
We have
Yes.
we have a rule of 3, and if after 3 days it's still raining, then give up.
You come home.
Yeah, but when you own a motorhome, you can, just leave it for next time.
So we hope in the last 30 minutes or so that we've given you an idea about the costs of motorhoming, how much it costs initially as a capital cost. And Matt's been very explicit about what it could cost you as ongoing costs and what you need to do to stay safe and also make the most of your motorhome. Any last tips, Matt, before we wrap up this podcast?
Well, we need to actually put some numbers on it, don't we? We need to put some money in the frame. Let's whistle stop through the cost, shall we? Just in summary. So, you've got to buy it. You've got to insure it. We've talked about that. So buying it, 30,000 is a budget. That's down to the individual. Insurance is going to be a few £100s, I would say. Servicing, you're looking at a few £100s a year. Road tax, probably £270 a year. Your MOT, if it needs it, you're probably looking at around £50, £60 a year. And then accessorising it, it's very, very easy to spend £1,000, but you might just do that at the beginning. And that's all your cutlery, cookware, bakeware. You might just take everything out of the house, save a small fortune. And then if you're storing it in a storage facility, you're looking at between £300 and £700 a year, probably, depending on where you are in the country and what sort of storage service you're getting. And then again, there's a podcast episode on that, storing your motorhome or caravan, so you can find out a bit more about the things you need to consider for that. A cam belt, you're probably looking at around £400 or £500. That probably is a one-off thing that you do whilst you own the motorhome. And then campsites, I say we choose campsites that are typically £30 a night. There's lots of lovely campsites that are £10 a night. It really depends where you want to stay. And then club membership, you're looking at around £40 to join a club. And fuel, that's a very subjective one as well. People always say to me, I think in this country we love to talk about how many miles per gallon does it do. I've never encountered that across Europe. It seems to be a British discussion point, like the weather. And I always say, does it matter?
Well, that was the next question I was going to ask you. I was going to say, we've never actually said in any of the podcasts, what's it going to cost me in fuel per gallon? Because we are used to like 56 miles an hour. But we also know that over the last few years, that those measurements have been taken by manufacturing companies, no names, no pack drill, which have actually fixed the results. And that's been proven in court.
And they're rubbish.
Yeah. So, but what are we thinking about? I mean, I fill up. I've got a Volvo at the moment. It's now costing me £109 to fill up the whole tank.
Yeah.
What does it cost me in a motorhome?
So it's going to depend on the size of the tank, and some motorhomes have the tank cut in half in order to accommodate water tanks and so on. But I've filled a motorhome up. I filled ours up the other day, and it was £140. And it's a 90-litre tank.
And what's that going to last you? How much motorhoming can you do on that tank?
Probably less than 500 miles. So ours is small. The motorhome that we own and go away in, it's just a 2-berth. We leave the kids at home. And we are probably getting mid-20s to the gallon. At a push, high 20s. If you're going in a big coach built, so that's the one with like a Luton van, maybe it's got an overcab bed, so it's got like an Elvis flick on the top of the head, and it's a big motorhome, big 6-berth, for example, you are going to get lower 20s to the gallon because it's carrying more weight and it's a much bigger thing cutting through the air. So 21, 22 to the gallon is realistic. But, in reality, if you're going to travel in a weekend, how many miles are you actually going to do? 200 miles maybe? And you're getting 20 odd to the gallon. There's 10. How much is that? I can't do the maths quick enough. But if
so how far are we travelled then?
Say we travelled 200 miles.
And you're getting 20 miles to the gallon?
Yeah, so 10 gallons.
Yeah. So 10 gallons.
5 something litres.
But at the moment, as we speak today, for diesel, it's 180 per litre. What's that, 4 litres per gallon? Am I right there?
A bit more, isn't it? So
yeah. So hang on a second. We're getting there. Let's call it £2. And that's 4 twos. So that's 4 twos are 8 times 2. That's 16 times 2 again. That's the 3. Yeah. It's going to cost lots.
it's about 40, 50 quid.
In my head, it came out at 37. But okay.
37?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll come with you. So, but in reality, you're going to spend between 35 and £55. That's fair, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, for a weekend away in some fantastic British sunshine, where you're giving everyone that's with you fantastic memories, for the sake of 40, 50 quid, I'd go a drop of a hat.
Yeah, that's about £12 per person, isn't it?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah, we love to talk about it, and that the campsite's going to cost you more than that. The beer I drink, the red wine, is going to cost me more than that. That's for sure.
Okay, then, the cost of motorhoming. Hopefully we have covered many of the aspects that you want to hear about. But, of course, if you want to know more, you can get in touch directly, can't you, Matt?
Please, we'd love that. So we'd love to know what you want us to talk about. We've had lots of people emailing us with questions and what ifs and what abouts. And please, join the list. We're going through them, and you're helping us create some great content, we hope. You can email us at team@motorhomematt.co.uk. We're on Instagram as well, at motorhomematt.co.uk, and on Facebook as Motorhome Matt. You can direct message us on any of those places, but do get in touch. We love to hear from you. If you have time and you're listening on Apple, on a podcast app, please leave us a review. A 5-star review and a quick comment is really welcome and very, very much appreciated by both me and by Keith. Keith doesn't get a lot of praise, and so he loves getting it. Thanks, Keith.
Yes. Thanks for joining the Motorhome Matt podcast. We'll be back with you soon.